Hi, this is the Philosophical Angle program, and I'm your host, Chris Angle. I'm the author of 4 books on philosophy, one of which is The Philosophical Equations of Economics. And these books are available free for viewing online at www.philosophypublishing.com. Along with me is my co-host and colleague, Rick Samuelson. Rick graduated from Yale and from Wharton and is a venture capitalist on the West Coast. Good to see you, Rick.
And you.
The purpose of the philosophical angle is to define concepts in current media. And what we're going to do here this week is we're going to talk about the front page article in the Wall Street Journal on Donald Trump, who it said made some lewd comments about women. So the Republicans they're all in a tizzy. And they're arguing amongst themselves, and the article reports that Paul Ryan, and actually there were several articles, and in one of them, Paul Ryan, the Speaker of the House, says he's going to withdraw his support of Trump, and there are other Republicans that want to drop support, but by and large, most and many are going to stand by the nominee. And so there's a big controversy here, and over what he said. And the GOP has done this before. They should be noted that this is not their first time with disharmony with their nominee. And for example, I think in 1964 there was a lot of discord about the nominee for president, Barry Goldwater. And I'd like to just here on an aside note that the Democrats never desert their candidate. And we're going to discuss this in a later episode, why that is. So get back to our point here. What are the issues here before us with these lewd comments by Trump? What should the GOP do? Before we proceed, I'd like to throw in a little bit of philosophy and give us a definition for the nature of truth. It'll become relevant here in a little bit later in our discourse here, in our conversation. William James, in his essays on pragmatism, said that truth is the corroboration and verification of something. It's the corroborating and the verifying. But I'm going to add here on the philosophical angle that he was almost right. He just needed to add a little something more, and that is, you've got to add that there is which you can verify and corroborate within a frame of reference. And I want to give you an example. We all know that Sir Isaac Newton came out with the famous equation, force equals mass times acceleration. And no one would say that this is incorrect, and it's been verified many times. But Einstein came along and said, look, at high speeds, this doesn't work. And astronomers and other people trying to verify this noticed that there was a little discrepancy when looking at through their through telescopes, that force equals mass times acceleration, and the Newtonian equations didn't work out exactly precisely. And so Einstein came along and gave the equations that made it happen, so that you could calculate it precisely. And it's because that at slow speeds, at that frame of reference, force equals mass times acceleration, and at fast, high speeds, you've got to add in Einstein's relativity equation. So what's happening here is that you need a frame of reference for determining truth. And this guy thinks it's going to be useful here in a little bit. Let's take our perspective here, and Rush Limbaugh on Monday on the 10th, he said that he noted that the Democrats always do this, and that they did it to Romney. They do it to whoever they can. They find some little bit of dirt, and so it doesn't really matter. I mean, they got it to Romney. They accused him of torturing his dog. He put him on the roof, and they talked about somebody that lost their life insurance that worked for one of his companies, and so they dig up some sort of little piece of dirt and blow it up. So as Rush points out, whoever you choose, or should I say whomever you choose, they will find, that is the left, will find something that person did wrong in his life and blow it up. Naturally, no one is perfect. And so it's interesting to note that after 10 years, NBC brings this video out, and just before the election, to thwart the GOP candidate. So we gotta give old NBC a nice one. Way to go on that one. So now we're going to recall our definition of truth and its need for the frame of reference. So there are two frames of reference here that we've got going here. The first one we're going to discuss is personal morality. So the video, his comments are noted clearly that this pertains to a personal morality, and not to excuse him, but men with their boyish tough talk sometimes exceed their what is normally considered ethically moral behavior in society. So is Trump a moral individual at the personal level? Well, probably he is. This was taken 10 years ago, and most people think he is. And although he slipped up here a tiny bit, we have to note that it was words and not action. So speaking of action, on the other side of the ledger, you've got the Democrats who have exhibited much worse behavior, all of it in the action column as opposed to words. We have the historical stories about JFK and his women into the White House, and Ted Kennedy leaving Mary Jo Kopechne to drown while he was having an affair with her, and he drove her over a bridge, and he was a little bit drunk, and the car fell into the water, and he didn't bother to save her. He just let her sit there and drown. Bill Clinton, allegations all the way from sexual abuse all the way up to rape, and in Hillary, her actions as a cleanup. She cleaned up and destroyed the lives of these women, if they spoke out. And so all these are, again, words versus actual actions. So the second frame of reference that I want to talk about is the candidates as a national leader, and the national leader not only of the U.S. but of the free world. And what does it require to make a good leader? Well, I feel that it requires an ideology from which one may arrive at a good decision for the country and for all those that our president leads. And with Trump, we can say it's a businessman's conservatism. And so what does he indicate that he will do? What does his ideology indicate that he will do? Well, he wants to cut taxes. Bring corporate taxation down to 15%, down from its level of 39% or so. And what would Hillary do? Well, Hillary wants to raise taxes. And Trump wants to also decrease personal income taxes. And what will Hillary do? She wants to raise it. To be fair, not on the low end, but only on the high end. She likes to talk about the 1%. So what do you think would be good for America? Lower taxation or higher taxation? And Trump also indicates in his ideology that he'd like to rebuild the armed forces. So Trump would like to build the armed forces up, and Hillary would like to further reduce them. Which is good for America? Regarding health care, Trump would like to replace Obamacare with something more market-oriented, make health care available across state lines. And Hillary, she would like to go to total government control, which would be better for America. Terrorism and immigration and safety, they're kind of all together. If you have terrorism, you're not going to be safe, and terrorism is caused by immigration for 99.9% of it. So what would Trump do about it? Well, he'd build a fence and enforce the rule of law that we already have on the books about immigration. And if the American public doesn't like it, call up your congressman, get him to write a new piece of legislation, and we'll get it into law, and Trump will sign it, and whatever it is. But he wants to enforce the rule of law. And Hillary, what does she want? Open borders and a total disregard for the rule of immigration law. So voting on a personal moral level, let's compare the two in summary. First, you got Trump's statement on women on one side of the ledger. Two, on the other side, you got Hillary's destruction of the lives of the girls that complained of their treatment by Bill Clinton. That's an action as opposed to words. Two, she's got the selling of her influence as Secretary of State to everyone throughout the world and making $125 million on it, depositing that into her personal accounts and to her Clinton Global Initiative. And she's got deleting the evidence of her emails after receiving a subpoena on them and lying about them. And she's got left her ambassador in Libya to be killed by the Benghazi terrorists, and then lying afterwards about it, about some video caused it, and then saying before Congress, well, what does it matter? Well, if you're out there in the working for the United States or in the military and putting your life on the line, you wouldn't want your political leader going, what does it matter? Your life. Not much. So as a leader of the U.S. and the free world, I think I will take Trump and his ideology. And I will do so because it matches mine a little bit more closely than Hillary's. On the personal morality side, I'm confident that Trump lived a better life than Hillary. And here's why. Because he just talked about it. But Hillary actually did those actions. So let's ask Rick his opinion of all this and the article in the Wall Street Journal and Trump's comments and what all. Rick, what do you think?
Well, I think the race remains very vulnerable because we don't know what new information is going to come out next week on either side. What's amazing is that Trump absolutely thumped her in the second debate on the issues. She really didn't have an answer to any of his facts concerning her past activities, her husband's past activities. She was left sort of bungling. Um, and what's disappointing is that didn't serve as a more important influence on the polls than this video. And there'll be more videos like that coming out on both sides, right? And what's a little bit unusual, or perhaps not unusual, perhaps it's a sign of a trend, the degree to which media and I'm including Facebook, Twitter, as well as the news media, can shape how events, or even if they're not events, accusations are interpreted, has truly become remarkable. And you see this reflected in the swinging of the polls back and forth. So, for the first time that I can remember, substantive issues like those raised in the debate just a couple days ago have been superseded by media portrayals, hot information flowing around the internet through various means. And you wonder, frankly, what that portends for the country long term. If this is the methodology by which people decide to vote one side or the other. As you know, I've not been a Trump supporter from the beginning. I thought there were better candidates out there. At the moment, based on what he said in the second debate, his positions are so much more solid, so much more effective compared to what were platitudes on the part of Hillary Clinton, that the choice for president is obvious. You have to vote for Trump if you're going to vote for anyone. So that, to me, that's not the issue. You can decide not to vote, but if you're going to vote, you have to vote for Trump based on what she would do to the country for all the reasons you suggested. And let me add that next year, we're already seeing the credit cycle mature. Bankruptcies are starting to rise again. Debt levels are at unprecedented levels on the corporate side. Government debt is at unprecedented levels worldwide. So next year, if we were to enter a recession, and who knows when that would be, mid-year, end of year, beginning of 2018, we will enter a recession. All right? Not even the Fed and all the central banks in the world can prevent the economic cycle from playing out. When we do hit that recession, the likelihood is we're going to be entering a sustained period of negative interest rates, certainly on all major government bonds, for probably an extended period of time, because there's no other way to go. All right? Growth remains muted, extremely muted. The Fed talks about a 25 basis point increase in rates toward the end of the year. Well, I mean, this is ridiculous. Nothing. It's absolutely nothing. It may have a big impact on the stock market, I grant that, and other asset prices, but relative to historic interest rates, it's minuscule. And if we enter a recession, what tools will be left? Well, the Fed, I don't think they're geniuses over there. They're sheep in many respects. They're likely to follow the model which has been attempted by both Japan and Europe, and which has been such a failure. That is the likely scenario. So we're going to be entering a period in the financial history of the world which is utterly unprecedented. And the implications of that, in terms of how a president or any national leader can respond, to grow the economy of the world, it'll be very, very problematic. It's been very problematic so far. The Fed has managed to essentially put in a put option on asset prices in many, many categories thus far. But in the event of a recession, that won't last.
So, any advice you'd give to the GOP on what to do about the recent spate of really of issues that are really not issues before the candidates?
Unfortunately, sadly, really, you have to fight fire with fire. They've got to find dirt on, I mean, there's plenty of dirt on Hillary to find, so they've got to find something as outrageous about her as the left have found about Donald, and probably more. They probably have to overdo it because he's behind the eight ball in the polls at the moment.
Right.
And they may, I mean, next week, who knows what's going to come to light.
How about the WikiLeaks dump recently?
Yeah, I mean, there's stuff in there, and it's voluminous. So as that's analyzed, you may see, some pretty juicy tidbits come to the fore.
Right. Okay. We're going to continue this discussion in a later session, a later episode of the Philosophical Angle, because there's some more aspects to this that I'd like to discuss. But for now, I want to thank everybody for watching, and we'll see you next time. Thanks, Rick.
Thank you.